The Vietnam War started in 1955. It was a massive conflict between North Vietnam, backed by communist allies, and South Vietnam, led by the United States. The US government poured in massive military force and spent millions of dollars to stop the spread of communism. But why did the world's most powerful military, the US Army, end up pulling out of this Asian war? And how exactly did Saigon fall? The Vietnam War was a major conflict fought in Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia during the Cold War era, breaking out after the First Indochina War. This conflict was fought between North Vietnam, which was supported by communist allies, and South Vietnam, backed by the United States and other anti-communist allies. The North Vietnamese government and the Viet Cong viewed the war as a colonial war, while the US government saw it as a way to stop the spread of communism. Looking back at history, Vietnam was temporarily divided along the 17th parallel during the 1954 Geneva Peace Conference. Furthermore, a nationwide election was scheduled for 1956 to form a single national government. Even though Ho Chi Minh wanted to keep fighting the South, his Chinese allies convinced him that he could win through the election alone. Since the Geneva Accords allowed people to move and settle in their preferred zone within a 300-day period, nearly 1 million Northerners, mostly Catholics, moved to the South out of fear of the communists. These fears arose because the CIA's Edward Lansdale spread rumors, portraying the Viet Minh as anti-Catholic, and also because of rumors that the US government was going to drop an atomic bomb on Hanoi. From the date of entry into force of the present agreement and until the movement of troops is completed, any civilians residing in a district controlled by one party who wish to go and live in the zone assigned to the other party shall be permitted and helped to do so by the authorities in that district. Engineered a tremendous propaganda campaign. The most effective of these was a rumor campaign that the Virgin Mary had moved south, which was later supplemented by leaflets showing a map with concentric circles of destruction from an atomic bomb. At that time, the US spent around $94 million, including the deployment of 17 ships to help resettle these people. Meanwhile, about 52,000 Vietnamese moved from the south to the north. During this period, between 1953 and 1956, the North Vietnamese government faced issues with land reforms and political oppression, with declassified archival reports showing that over 13,500 people were executed. Even the leaders in Hanoi admitted in 1956 that the implementation of this program had gone too far. Errors have been committed in the implementation of land reform. We have heard some families of resistance fighters and cadres. The government and the party will resolutely correct these errors. On the other side, in the south, Emperor Bao Dai remained in power, and Ngo Dinh Diem was appointed as prime minister, forming the state of Vietnam. However, neither the US government nor Diem's government signed the agreements of the 1954 Geneva Conference. US President Dwight D. Eisenhower himself knew that about 80% of the Vietnamese people would vote for Ho Chi Minh, and the Pentagon Papers also noted that people were more likely to vote for Ho Chi Minh over Diem. We do not wish to make it appear Ngo Dinh Diem our protégé, or that we are irrevocably committed to him. On the other hand, we do believe kind of thing he stands for is necessary ingredient of success, and we do not now see it elsewhere. Because of this, to stop the spread of communism, the US and the South Vietnamese government rejected and blocked the nationwide election that was supposed to be held in 1956. Diem's refusal to hold consultations in 1955 and elections in 1956, as stipulated by the Geneva Accords, was supported and encouraged by the United States. The US government played a direct role in the ultimate breakdown of the Geneva settlement. In 1957, the International Control Commission also reported that holding a free and impartial election had become impossible. Later on October 23, 1955, Ngo Dinh Diem declared the southern part of Vietnam as the Republic of Vietnam and named himself president, following a rigged referendum organized by his brother Ngo Dinh Diem, who was a Roman Catholic, was a fierce dictator and practiced heavy nepotism. In the Buddhist majority South, he ran anti-communist campaigns that involved arresting, torturing, and executing people. In 1956, he passed a law that allowed the death penalty for anyone promoting communism. And in 1959, he enacted Law 1059, which permitted executions and property confiscation. The penalty of death, with confiscation of the whole or part of his property, shall be imposed on whoever commits or intends to commit crimes against the security of the state. Between 1955 and 1957, more than 12,000 people who opposed Diem were killed, and by the end of 1958, around 40,000 political prisoners had been jailed. Although Diem traveled to the US to secure aid, US Secretary of State John Foster Dulles privately mentioned that Diem only won the election because he ran unopposed. When the Diem government carried out a rural resettlement program, it seized a lot of farmland and handed it back to wealthy landlords, which completely enraged the peasants. Min remembers the anger of peasants taken away from their ancestral lands, home of the graves of their ancestors, and dumped in shoddy concrete houses, surrounded by barbed wire fences, forced to present identification cards to soldiers at the hamlet gate. Since land rent was collected by force using the South Vietnamese military, up to 75% of the countryside turned against the government in support of the National Liberation Front. According to the U.S. State Department's analysis, the outbreak of civil war in the South in 1958 was a spontaneous rebellion by the Southerners themselves. However, North Vietnamese leaders had already approved a strategy to march south in December 1956. By January 1959, they officially adopted the path of armed revolution. The essential path of development of the revolution in South Vietnam is that of violent struggle. Given the concrete conditions of our country, this is a struggle that uses force, combining armed struggle with political struggle to overthrow the US Diem regime. In May, Unit 599 was formed to secure and maintain a route through Laos. This became known as the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which allowed a massive influx of troops and weapons into the south. In December 1960, the Viet Cong were officially organized under the name National Liberation Front to unite everyone opposing the South Vietnamese government. Operating under the direct command of COSVN from the Cambodian city of My Mot, they waged a relentless guerrilla war. The essential path of development of the revolution in South Vietnam is that of violent struggle. Given the concrete conditions of our country, this is a struggle that uses force, combining armed struggle with political struggle to overthrow the US Diem regime. John F. Kennedy, who won the 1960 US presidential election, faced multiple global crises like the Cuban Missile Crisis, the building of the Berlin Wall, and the failure at the Bay of Pigs. To save face and protect US prestige, he stepped in to prevent a communist victory in Vietnam, turning the country into a major battlefield. In the final analysis, it is their war. They are the ones who have to win it or lose it. We can help them, we can give them equipment, we can send our men out there as advisors, but they have to win it. The people of Vietnam against the communists. Because the South Vietnamese army performed poorly due to weak leadership and corruption, Kennedy sent in the Green They raised special forces and tested out experimental weapons. Despite warnings that they would suffer heavy casualties just like the French did, US military personnel grew to around 16,000, and US combat troops officially began deploying in 1965. The operations eventually expanded into Laos and Cambodia, accompanied by heavy bombing campaigns. US involvement peaked during the 1968 Tet Offensive, after which they gradually began pulling out under a policy called Vietnamization. The Paris Peace Accords were signed in January 1973, and US involvement came to a permanent end due to the Case-Church Amendment approved by the US Congress on August 15, 1973. I declare the Saigon government is completely dissolved at all levels. I invite the representatives of the Provisional Revolutionary Government to enter to discuss the transfer of power in order to avoid useless bloodshed. The following year, North and South Vietnam were officially reunited. This massive war took an incredible toll on human life. Estimates vary, but it's believed that between 1 million and 3 million Vietnamese soldiers and civilians lost their lives. Additionally, between 200,000 and 300,000 Cambodians, and anywhere from 20,000 to 300,000 Laotians were killed. The war also claimed the lives of 58,220 US soldiers.